Disclaimer. The following story was sent to me by a man who asked me not to use his real name, the name of his apartment complex, or the city where this happened. He told me it started the week a new tenant moved into the unit across from his. At least, that's what management said. Because nobody in the building actually saw the new tenant move in. Not during the day, not with a truck, not with boxes, not with furniture. The first time anyone noticed someone was living in that apartment was after midnight. I've lived in apartments long enough to know you hear everything. You hear people arguing through walls. You hear dogs scratching at doors. You hear footsteps in the hallway, elevators opening, TVs through the ceiling, water running through pipes at 3 in the morning. You get used to it. But a few years ago, someone moved into the apartment across from mine. And from the very first night, the building started making sounds I had never heard before. The worst part was this. I never once saw that tenant enter in daylight, only after midnight. And after a while, I stopped being sure they were using the door at all. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy realistic horror stories, true-style apartment horror, unsettling late-night encounters, and the kind of stories that slowly get more disturbing the longer they go on, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And when this story's over, tell me in the comments if someone moved into the apartment across from yours, but you only ever heard them after midnight. How long would it take before you started watching that door? Now let's get into it. I was living in a third-floor apartment outside Columbus when this happened. Nothing fancy, one-bedroom unit in a long beige building with exterior brick around the entrance, a shared hallway, old carpet, cheap overhead lighting, and the kind of management that fixed problems only when enough people complained at once. It was the kind of place you picked because it was affordable, close enough to work, and quiet enough most of the time. I'd been there a little over a year, long enough to know who smoked on their balcony, who came home drunk on Thursdays, which dog on the second floor barked every time the elevator opened, and which maintenance guy slammed doors like he was being paid extra for it. Across from me, apartment 3B had been empty for almost 2 months. I knew because the blinds stayed shut, the doormat was gone, and the little peephole across the hall stared at me every time I came home from work like a dead eye. At first, I liked having the unit empty. No loud TV, no kids, no door slamming at random hours. Just a dark apartment across the hall and a strip of hallway carpet between us. Then one Monday evening, I came home and noticed a paper taped beside the mailboxes downstairs. It said management wanted to welcome a new resident to Unit 3B. That was it. No name. Just, please be respectful as our newest resident settles in. I remember reading it twice because something about it felt lazy. Usually management posted a first name at least. Welcome Sarah, or welcome James. Something normal. This just said newest resident. Still, I didn't think much of it. I worked late that night, ate takeout on my couch, watched half a game, and went to bed around 11:30. At 12:47 a.m., I woke up to the sound of something heavy rolling down the hallway. Not a cart, not a suitcase. It sounded slower than that. A hard dragging sound, then a pause, then another dragging sound, getting closer to my door. I sat up and listened. The sound stopped directly outside. Then I heard a door unlock across the hall. Not open, unlock, a deadbolt first, then the knob. Then a long pause. Then the door to 3B creaked open just enough to let something inside. No voices, no footsteps, just that dragging sound once more. Then the door closing. I checked my phone. 12:49. I remember lying there staring into the dark thinking, okay, new tenant, late move-in. Weird, but whatever. Then I heard one more thing. From directly across the hall, through the wall behind my bed, a child's music box started playing, soft, slow, and badly out of tune. The next morning, I got up early for work and made a point of looking at 3B before I left. No welcome mat, no shoes outside, no boxes, no furniture wrappers, nothing. Just the same blank beige door, same peephole, same brushed metal numbers screwed into the frame. That evening, I ran into Marisol from 3A while checking my mail downstairs. She was maybe 60, lived alone, and knew everything that happened in the building before management did. So I asked if she'd seen the new tenant. She frowned. Then she said, "He moved in late." I asked if she'd met him. She said no. Then she added, "I heard him." I laughed a little and asked what that meant. She didn't laugh back. She said, "He came in after midnight. No truck, no help. Just one sound in the hall like something heavy being pulled." That made me stop smiling. I asked if she saw him. She shook her head. Then she looked toward the stairwell and said, "You let me know if you hear that music again." I asked what music. She didn't answer, just walked back to her unit. That night, I stayed up later than usual. Not because I was scared, because once someone plants the idea in your head that something odd is happening right across from your door, you start waiting for it. At 12:41 a.m., the hallway light outside my peephole flickered once. At 12:44, I heard the dragging sound again. Slow, heavy, deliberate. This time I got out of bed and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The sound was still there, getting closer from the far end near the stairwell. But there was nobody in sight. No person, no cart, no suitcase. Nothing moving across the carpet at all. Then the sound stopped right in front of 3B. I watched the door. The deadbolt unlocked from the inside. Not the outside. From the inside. Then the knob turned. The door opened 3 inches into darkness, then stayed there for maybe 5 seconds. Then it closed. The dragging sound was gone. I stood there at my peephole long enough for my eye to hurt. Nobody came out. Nobody walked away. And a few seconds later, that same music box started up again. Soft little notes, like something meant for a nursery. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I checked with the leasing office. I tried to keep it casual. Asked if the new tenant in 3B had just moved from out of state or something. The girl at the desk glanced at her screen and said, yes, the lease had been finalized over the weekend. I asked the tenant's name. She said she couldn't share that. Fair enough. Then I asked if maintenance had gone over to inspect the unit before move-in. She paused, clicked around, then said, actually, that's strange. I asked what. She said there was no completed move-in checklist attached yet. I asked if that mattered. She gave me that fake customer service smile and said it probably just hadn't been uploaded. Then she asked why I wanted to know. I told her I'd heard unusual noises late at night. She immediately said, oh yes, the resident works nights. I asked how she knew that if she couldn't even give me a name. She didn't answer that one. She just said if there were any noise complaints, I could file them online. That night, When I got home from work, there was a smell in the hallway. Not rot, not trash. Something sweet, powdery, like baby powder and damp wood. It was strongest right outside 3B. I stood there longer than I should have, keys in my hand, staring at the crack under the door. No light underneath, no sound. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Marisol. Do not open your door after 12:45. I turned and looked at her door. Nothing. No movement. No shadow under it. I texted back. Why? She didn't answer. At 12:43 a.m., the hallway light flickered. At 12:44, the music box started before the dragging sound this time. That was new? I went to the peephole again. Empty hallway, same cheap carpet, same beige walls, same humming overhead light. Then something changed at the far end. The shadows near the stairwell shifted, and for 1 second I thought I saw the outline of a person standing there. Too tall. Still, head slightly bent. Then the dragging sound started again, but the shape never seemed to move. It just got closer. And the feeling of something being there got stronger with every second. Then apartment 3B unlocked from the inside. The door opened wider this time, maybe 6 inches. I could see darkness beyond it, but not a room, not furniture, just blackness. And then, at the very edge of my vision through the peephole, something narrow and pale slipped past the doorframe and into the apartment. The door shut. The deadbolt locked. The music stopped. I backed away from the door so fast I hit the table behind me. I didn't even know what I'd seen. A hand, maybe. An arm. Something jointed wrong. The next morning, Marisol knocked on my door before work. The first thing she asked was, "Did you look?" I said yes. She nodded like she'd expected that. Then she told me the tenant before the vacancy was a young mother with a little boy. They'd only lived there 6 months. One night, neighbors heard the child crying after midnight. Then the crying stopped. After that, management said the mother broke the lease early and moved out. But Marisol said she never saw them leave. Just like none of us had seen the new tenant arrive. I asked why she hadn't told me that earlier. She said because she didn't want me getting curious. Then she said the thing that got under my skin the most. She said, "If you hear knocking from across the hall, don't answer yours." That whole day at work, I couldn't focus. I kept replaying the door unlocking from the inside. That was the part I couldn't explain away. If a person was coming down the hallway late at night, they should unlock the door from outside. But every time, 3B opened before anything entered, like the apartment already knew something was there. That evening, I decided I was done treating it like an inconvenience. I set my phone on a shelf facing the peephole and started recording a little before midnight. I wanted proof. A noise, a shadow, anything. At 12:46, the hallway light flickered. At 12:47, the dragging sound began. At 12:48, there was a soft knock. Not on 3B, on my door. 3 slow taps. I froze. Then another 3. The sound came from exactly eye level on the other side. Not low, not random, deliberate. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, from directly across the hall, the deadbolt of 3B unlocked, the door opened, and something whispered from the hallway, close enough that I heard it through the wood. Wrong door. I don't know how long I stood there after that. A minute, maybe longer. But eventually, curiosity won, and I checked the recording on my phone. The video showed the hallway clearly through my peephole. The light flicker was there. The knock was there too. You could hear it. And right after the second set of taps, 3B opened by itself. But the hallway stayed empty on camera. No person, no figure, nothing at all. Just the open door across the hall. And then, for one frame, a small shape low to the ground, crossing into the apartment too quickly to make out. I replayed that frame at least 20 times. It never got clearer. The next day, I went back to management angry enough that I didn't care how I sounded. I told them someone in 3B was causing disturbances, knocking on my door after midnight, and I wanted them to check the unit. The property manager this time was a different woman, older, sharper. She pulled up the file for 3B. Then her expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. I asked what was wrong. She said the unit was showing occupied in one system and unassigned in another. I told her that wasn't funny. She said I was the one who came in asking. Then she asked me who told me someone had moved into 3B. I said there was a notice by the mailboxes. She frowned and said there had been no notice. I went downstairs to show her. The paper was gone. That night, I packed a bag and planned to stay with my brother. But I got home late, close to midnight, and by the time I walked in, I was tired, irritated, and embarrassed at how badly the whole thing had gotten into my head. So I told myself I'd leave first thing in the morning. At 12:45, there was no flicker, no dragging, no music. Just silence. I remember thinking maybe that was worse. Because once you get used to a pattern, silence feels like a change in behavior. At 12:52, my power went out, only in my unit. The hallway light under my door was still on. I grabbed my phone flashlight and went to the peephole. At first, I saw nothing. Then the light in the hallway dimmed, and apartment 3B opened all the way. Inside, for the first time, I could see part of the unit. No furniture, no lamps, no moving boxes. Just an empty living room, and the faint outline of a child's mobile hanging from the ceiling farther inside. Turning slowly, though, there was no air moving. Then something stepped into the doorway from within the apartment. Tall, too thin, head angled slightly to one side, and holding one small hand in its own, not attached to a body. Just the hand, small, pale, child-sized. I stumbled back so hard I dropped my phone. There came a soft knock again, this time from inside my apartment. 3 taps, on the wall behind my couch, the wall I shared with 3B. That broke me. I grabbed my bag, unlocked the door, and ran. When I hit the hallway, 3B's door was still open. I made the mistake of glancing once as I passed. The apartment wasn't empty anymore. The far wall was covered in little handprints, small ones, dragging downward. I took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator and nearly fell getting to the second floor. Marisol opened her door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting. She pulled me inside and locked it. I asked if she'd heard it too. She just said, "You looked in." Not a question, a fact. I stayed with my brother after that. 2 days later, management emailed the building saying Unit 3B would be undergoing maintenance and asked residents not to be alarmed by repair noise. A week after that, the door to 3B was propped open during the day. For the first time since I'd moved in, I drove back just to see it. The unit was empty, completely. Fresh paint, new carpet, no furniture, no marks, no mobile, nothing. A maintenance guy was carrying supplies out, and I asked what had happened. He said the place had been vacant for months. I asked if anyone had moved in. He looked at me strangely and said no. Then he added something that I wish he hadn't. He said, "But the nursery wallpaper under the old paint was a pain to strip." I never went back after dark. I broke my lease 3 weeks later and moved. Before I left, Marisol slipped a folded note under my door. Inside, she had written just one sentence. "It always knocks on the wrong door first." I still think about that line, because every terrible part of this story came after I started paying attention to 3B, after I watched it, after I waited for it. And sometimes, late at night, in whatever place I'm living now, I'll hear 3 soft taps from somewhere in the hall. Not loud, not urgent, just patient, like something checking to see if I've forgotten the rules. And the reason I'm telling you this now is because last winter, more than 3 years after I moved out, I got curious enough to search the old address online. The building had been renovated. New flooring, new lighting, new leasing site, new photos. But when I zoomed in on the 3rd floor hallway picture, apartment 3B had a welcome mat in front of it, and taped to the wall beside the door was a small paper sign. It said, "Please be respectful as our newest resident settles in." No name, just that. So if you ever live in an apartment building long enough to learn its sounds. And one night, a new tenant seems to move in across from you without boxes, without footsteps, without daylight. Do yourself a favor. Don't wait for the second night. And if you hear knocking from the other side of the hall after midnight, don't be the one who checks first.